Hello. Welcome back to the Saba Show. We're back for the round 20 round review. And there are a few games this week that really shaped the top four. And a couple others that, have made the bottom couple spots for the 8, a bit less certain. We don't know who's going to make those spots. But let's hop right into this week's slate of games. Started at Friday night. A lot of people were criticizing us for getting the Friday night time slot against the Saints. And we rocked up. Last week it was a very big disaster against North, but this week we came out firing. I think everything went right. And it started with the ins and outs. I think we got that horribly wrong against North. They were just really questionable. We dropped Harry, or he was injured, but we brought in small forwards for him, and it just made for a complete disaster in terms of forward structure. But then, this week we brought in Harry, we brought in Charlie, we brought in Josh Honey, and we also brought in Lockie O'Brien, which we haven't seen too much of in the last year and a half or so. And we took out Cottrell, Samo, and Williams and Betts as well. So a couple of those guys that went out, they weren't showing the effort that's required at AFL level, or the skills, the standard. But look, we got that completely right this week. The forward structure looked really good. Pretty much everyone contributed. You've got Charlie Curnow. He got through his first game. That was perfect. Mark Murphy may have kicked his last goal in his career right on the final siren to cap off the win. The only thing that went wrong was the injury to TDK, Tom DeConning. But even in that, we found Jack Silvani, who's we didn't know he had this in him to play ruck, and he held his own very well. He did so a couple of weeks back against Brodie Grundy in that crucial, fight back late in the game. But this week, we held up well for pretty much 3 quarters, and we won the ball at the contest. We were converting set shots. That's uncalled for. We were getting less inside 50s, but kicking more goals. Usually it's the other way around, but it was really good to see for us. And if we can carry this form out to, the end of the season, we're still in a finals hunt, amazingly. A couple of weeks ago, we were written off, but now we're back amongst it, and we're a win outside of the 8. So very exciting times. But for the Saints, another inconsistent showing. Dougal Howard went out injured. Hunter Clark also probably, something linked to that jaw injury he had earlier in the year. So that was the start of the problems. And they had no match for Harry. The backline's fairly small. They've been very solid the last few weeks. Carlton was switched on. We were switched on. And, we punished them. And they had no answer. So very good showing for us. Especially when we needed it. We were not coming in as favourites. And for the Saints, huge dent in their finals hopes. Next game I covered was North and Geelong. This one, not a pretty match down at Blunston, low-scoring affair. The Cats never really got going. North never really got going. I think, I said in my preview that a strong defensive performance was going to get this one done. They did so last week against Richmond. They don't need to score big in order to win. Their defensive efforts do the job. And, North, they put up a very strong fight there. Backline held up very well, until the last quarter where Tom Hawkins kicked 2 rippers, with that really unpredictable wind down in Tassie. You got your regular contributors for the Cats. Zach Guthrie was very good. I think he had 29 touches, 13 marks, 6 of those were intercepts or something like that. So really good for him. And, they had a debutant in that also played defense, Nathan Kruger. He was pretty good from what I saw. He has an attack on the footy. And he held his own as well. All the Geelong defenders did. Tom Stewart, you know what you're going to get from him. Blitzarves, he was all over the ground. But, Geelong, they needed to get this win. Every win is crucial in that fight for the top 4 spots. And yeah, they got the job done, so no complaints here for the Cats. And to top it off, for the Saturday fixtures, we only had 3 because, you know, the whole fixture reshuffle with that, you know, lockdown in Queensland. We had Collingwood and West Coast. Absolute disaster for West Coast. They were out of it, you know, by the end of the first quarter. They were out before it even started. You know, they were down by about 50 at the half. They looked like traffic cones. Collingwood were doing whatever they wanted. Early on, you know, the Pies, you know, they weren't very polished going forward. And West Coast should consider themselves lucky that they weren't down by more. But yeah, once the Pies got going, you know, it was great to watch for them. But for the Eagles, it was just absolutely dire for what was Shannon Hearn's 300th game, and also a very important game for them to win, especially against a side that's lower ranked, because they're not in the finals as such at the moment. Sitting in 7th, they've only got 10 wins or 11 wins. I think they've got 10. So they aren't, you know, in a top 8 spot as of yet. And this did them no favours, but, you know, for the Pies, youngsters did well, still side bottom went in the middle, went nuts. Brodie Grundy, you know, he's had some iffy weeks, but this week, you know, he redeemed himself, took him around the ground, overworked him, yeah, all that jazz. Nothing good to say about West Coast, except for the fact that they, you know, they kicked a couple consolation goals to make the scoreline seem a bit better than what it actually was. But yeah, still an absolute demolition. And yeah, we will see how West Coast go, because I made the outrageous prediction that they were going to beat Brisbane. We'll get onto them later, but I don't think they're going to win another game for the season, especially if they go out playing like that. Very good win for the Pies. Very solid win for confidence and for Robert Harvey's, you know, coaching audition. We move to Sunday, and we had 5 games on Sunday. We'll start with the first game that I covered. Hawthorn played Brisbane, and Brisbane looked horrible. Hawthorn looked very good for the 3 quarters, and then it all flipped in the last quarter. Brisbane kicked 8 goals. They were down by 50, and the scoreline ended at 12 points. So Hawthorn, you know, as you know, with the young side, they're going to slow down as the game goes on. And we saw what Brisbane can do with their goal explosion. They look like they're on track for about 45 points 3-quarter time, and they end up with 80. So they kicked 50 points in the last quarter, which is absolutely nuts. And you know, if they made that run a little bit earlier, they would have run over the top. But for the Hawks, very, very good performance. Their backline was pretty firm until the last quarter, where everyone took their foot off the gas. They made an interesting move, the Hawks, to put Connor Nash in the midfield. Looked like he was doing a bit of a tagging job on Lachie Neale. Did very well. Got his hands on the footy. Did a lot of tackling. Got the clearances. You know, stuff that I wouldn't expect from a guy like him, who was pretty much a spud. Who has been a spud for his whole career. And then they just insert him in the midfield. So maybe they found something there, like we mentioned last week with Josh Shackey going in the back line. This is a role change that, you know, this could, you know, flip his career. You know, he can play a strong role in getting wins for the Hawthorn Footy Club. But yeah, you know, strong win from them, because I don't think anyone saw this coming. Hawthorn have been depleted. The young guns have shown some signs. Luke Bruce went down with a big injury, and that probably hurt them in the last quarter when they were, you know, they only kicked 1 goal in the last quarter, so that scoring prowess went away. They did all the work to get a win in this game, and, you know, if it got stolen off them, it would have been an absolute daylight robbery. So, yeah, very good win by the Hawks. Much deserved. Brisbane, they are in a bit of strife now. I don't believe they're in the fall, so we'll be interested to see if they can fight back and, you know, regain one of those spots. But based on yesterday's showing, it is not a good sign for them. And the last game I covered in full was GWS Port. Port, you know, they got the job done in this one. GWS looked out of it at stages. They looked like they were going to get blown away. But they fought back, and credit to them. Daniel Lloyd, you know, he kicked a few goals. James Peatling, on debut, was good off halfback. You know, just breaking the lines. Very confident. Tried to take a hang, I think, in the second quarter or something. but that was good for them. They may have found another one. I believe he's from the academy. But the Port Adelaide Power, scoring, it's not usually a problem for them against lower ranked sides, and yesterday was no exception. Dixon, Georgiades, Marshall, Laddams, they all got on the scoreboard, which is really good for them. It's about getting that balance for Port. They've never seemed to get it quite right, and I still don't think we know what's right for them. But, credit to them. They held true, and they got a big win. For the Giants, they needed this one. They're holding on. I think they're ninth, actually, because Freo overtook them. But, Hopper went down with a concussion. Phil Davis is out again. That man can't catch a break with injuries. There'll be no problems replacing Hopper because their midfielders playing forward. Taranto's playing forward at the moment, which is a really questionable move given his form across the entirety of the season. But I think Davis is going to be a bit more of a problem in terms of covering for, because Haynes is probably their most experienced now, depending on how long Phil Davis is out, if he's out. I don't know if it's that serious or not, or if it was precaution. But, the Giants, it's just another game that got away for them. They've got all this talent, and, emerging talent as well. Like, it's not like they've had the same talent for years. They're getting a lot more talent coming in, but still they're not able to break through with a big win or a big campaign. And yesterday was another example of that. So the Giants will be disappointed, but the Power will be, very, very happy with themselves that this game didn't get away from them. We will skim over the rest of the games for this week. The Bulldogs played the Crows. The Bulldogs, always had this one under control. The Crows, I think we just expected this performance. Down in Ballarat, I think, the big guns had their game again. They didn't seem to have any problems down back either. The Crows only scored 56 because they had Easton Wood back as well, and I believe Dunkley back in as well. But Dunkley didn't have too much of an influence, I believe. But yeah, your Bontempellis, your McRae's, your Caleb Daniels been very good. I think he's been an underrated aspect of the Dogs midfield and the Dogs emergence this season. He was good last year as well. But he's just solidified that halfback role. And you want the ball in his hands. Him and Bailey Dale are just absolutely damaging. But they've put Caleb Daniel in the midfield a little bit more recently. And he does damage if he gets the football. So I think that's where you want him, around the ball. He can get in and under. Yeah, another strong win for the Dogs. We'll see, if the Dogs can close out strong, and we'll see if the Adelaide Crows can scrape by with another win for the rest of the year. Otherwise, they could be staring down the barrel of a 15th place finish, which is pretty disappointing given their promising start to the year. On Sunday, there's not much to talk about in terms of the Melbourne Gold Coast game, except this was an absolute demolition. It should have been more. The D's, 18 goals, 20. That's absolutely ridiculous. It could have been, they could have been going for 150 points in this game. And for the Suns, disgusting game from them. I believe it was like 3 goals apiece in the first quarter, and they've ended 18 goals to 4. So another week where they've faded out, very similar to the fade out against Brisbane last week, in which that game was like an 80-point turnaround in one half of football. And this was just, they never got going with this one. We already knew the D's defense is just formidable. You can't get through that thing. And for the Suns, very inexperienced forward line. Kings had games under his belt. Jeffrey was playing his first game for the club. Josh Corbett, he's not your known goal kicker. He's not going to, break the game apart and kick 3 1/4. So they don't really have a threat up there. I think we expected something like this. Not to this nature. But, you can see how far off the mark the Suns are from competing with the best. Regardless, abysmal showing for Gold Coast and another strong win for the D's, in which they stamp down their authority and solidify, a top 4 spot. Now for the game that was probably the match of the round, and a game which I regret not seeing the entirety of. I saw bits and pieces of the second half, and this game was end-to-end. The Swans playing the Bombers. Razor couldn't put his whistle away. Very questionable free kicks at times there. But this is what you want to see as a football fan, and a high-scoring affair. Both teams scoring above 100 points. This was just end-to-end football, and two pretty entertaining sides to watch. Going head-to-head. The Swans, they love to break the lines. They love to go through the corridor, and the Bombers, they've played an entertaining brand of footy this year as well. We saw, good players on both sides putting on a show for us. Callum Mills, brilliant return game for him, crucial to the Swans winning this one. I mean, I can't single out any single player because everyone was pretty damn good in this match. There wasn't too many mistakes, and even if there was, it was entertaining nonetheless. You saw players running on the break, on the counter, people kicking great goals, converting, 17-7 to Sydney and 16-6 to the Bombers. So they were both accurate as well, being clinical in that department. This was just a great game of footy. And I mean, I said in my predictions that Sydney would just, because they were smoking hot, and they have been, they were going to get the job done in this one. And Essendon, just lacking that bit of class in the closing moments. And, we saw that. The Swans just had a little bit more class. They kicked a couple goals out of nothing. And yeah, that ultimately, cost the Bombers in the end. It was a game which both sides, I guess, deserved to win from what I saw. So yeah, but, very good game by both sides. They'll both be finding positives out of this one. Essendon a bit stiff to not win this one. But, that's not to say that Sydney didn't deserve it either. It was just a really good game of football. Final game of the round that I covered was Fremantle Richmond. I only saw the closing moments. Very ugly first half for both sides that couldn't convert. Quite the contrary to the Essendon Sydney game. But that's not to say that the last quarter didn't live up to the hype. This one had me on the edge of my seat. I watched the closing moments. It looked like Richmond were going to run over the top. But then, credit to Freo, they fought back extremely well. They were down a couple goals, staring down the barrel of defeat in the last quarter. But then they kicked 2 clutch goals. Lockie Schiltz with a big mark, and then converted. And then Caleb Sarong under pressure. Beautiful snap in traffic to put them in front. And that's ultimately what gave them the win. But I said in my predictions that Brayshaw and Cheryl would have to go nuclear, and they both did. They both had 30 plus. Brayshaw just in the tackle department, I think he had 12. He went absolutely nuts. He nearly had 40 touches. He was hectic. And, his efforts in the closing moments, I think there's been a lot of discussion about that, especially on social media. Just the efforts in the closing moments. It was just fitting that he got the final clearance from the final stoppage of the game, where it was locked in Richmond's forward 50. And you didn't know if Richmond were going to get a free kick or, something bad was going to happen for Fremantle. And Richmond were just going to kick the winner with 5 seconds to go. But Brayshaw was the one, fittingly, to get the clearance, get it on the wing, and basically, just confirm that Freo were going to win this game. He's been leading from the front, even when Fife and Walters are in that team, but I think even more so now, it's going to be very noticeable, for the rest of the season. So if he can bring these efforts to the table alongside Shera, if their forwards can fire, Matt Tabbin, I think, 3, which is what you need from someone like him. That's what he was lacking last week. Obviously, I don't think he kicked the goal. So that's going to be the recipe to a loss. So, you want your keys to be kicking goals, and he did that. And it contributed. It was very important in a game where goals came at a premium. But yeah, this is just a huge win for Fremantle. I didn't see it coming, but fair play to them with a lot of players out, and I'm talking a lot. They were just able to pull through. And, Richmond aren't the greatest side in the world this year, but they were still looking like favourites going into the game with all the outs Fremantle had. So, huge win for Fremantle, and Richmond, just, there's not much more you can say about them. Their finals hopes. This is one they needed to win. They've got North next week, and you can argue they're not going to be favourites going into that. With the form they've been in, and with the form North has been in. So we'll see how we go, but that could be another danger game for the Tigers, and they could be staring down, a 13th place finish, which is going to be pretty disgusting given they won the premiership last year. So we'll see how that goes for them. But Fremantle, I didn't expect them to get another win this season, but if there's performances from Brayshaw and Chera and all the young guys contributing, who knows? Who knows how this team will go? That is all for the round 20 recap. I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure to smash a like, subscribe. If you want to see more footy content, that's about it. And I will see you for the preview for round 21 later in this week. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Peace out.